All right, I'll call the meeting to order.
The meeting has been posted according to open meeting laws.
Roll call.
President Seaver.
Here.
Trustee Alexander.
Here.
Trustee Johnson. Trustee Renucci.
Here.
Trustee Smalley. And Trustee Wisniewski.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, citizen participation per Village Resolution 2017-01. Anyone wishing to address the village board during citizen participation will be allowed 5 minutes. Your subject can be anything, whether on the agenda or not. Yet the village board should not engage in a discussion regarding comments because it was not part of a publicly noticed agenda. Upon conclusion of the citizen participation segment, members of the audience are not allowed further comment unless they are participating in a public hearing or specifically allowed by a majority vote of the village board due to involvement in an agenda item. With that being said, is there anybody that would like to speak during citizen participation? Yes. I'd say now.
Hi, my name is Ed Hinsberger. I live at 2944 Union Street. I'd just like to bring up the bike race. They changed the route last year, so it does go down my street. I emailed Vanessa Lenz with the Chamber of Commerce 3 times, March 14th, which was totally ignored, March 24th, which she told me she'd get an answer to me in a week, and then June 12th, which she responded when I started posting on their Facebook. They told us they would give us parking information as soon as they figured it out for those of us that were denied access to our property, and they absolutely failed to do so until, publicly posting on their Facebook page. So last year, basically that cost me 8 hours of vacation with the bikes and the car they have honking that shuts down work at home. You can't work at home with that car they have honking nonstop. It stops people from going to their office because they don't know where they can park when they get back or if there will be parking. So this event, this costs citizens money. It costs them vacation time. And then taking vacation, you can't even leave because all the bike racers are going up and down the sidewalk. And when I brought that to the attention of the organizers last year, they basically told me, well, it doesn't matter. My next door neighbors who are elderly, their cat had an emergency. They had to take it to the vet. And they literally, early 70s, they had to climb over a fence to get to their vehicle because of the poor planning of the Chamber of Commerce. Another neighbor was told by the organizers he wasn't allowed to water his lawn. So this is not only not being able to access your property, but then it's them telling you what you can and can't do on your property, and then further restricting you to basically taking the chance of walking down the sidewalk and getting hit by a bike person riding down the sidewalk. The East Troy has several ordinances regarding the bike race. 423-27 covers reasons that you must mandatorily deny a permit. For G2, it is for a usage that is for private or commercial economic gain. The company that puts it on, Midwest Cycling Series, they are an LLC with an estimated $491,000 in annual revenue. So that right there, that should be an automatic denial. Also for G3, if the usage would involve violation of law, including village ordinances, again, the village ordinance is anyone 10 years or older can't ride a bike on any village sidewalk, and that's all they were doing, to the point that people couldn't even leave their houses. For discretionary denials during work hours, if it causes traffic and congestion, that's F1, which obviously it does because it's blocking off village streets. And then F2 for if there's any events from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. And they had people throwing cones in our driveways at 8 a.m. Last year. So that's 2 mandatory denial reasons, 2 discretionary denial reasons why the bike race should not happen the way that it does. this event, they're profiting on the back of residents. You know, I don't want to use vacation time again this year, with them totally ignoring my emails until I went on their public Facebook forum. That's absolutely ridiculous. That doesn't let people plan. I'm a 100% disabled veteran, and their plan also doesn't cover anything that's an ADA compliance. I have multiple sclerosis. I don't know how my walking is going to be from day to day. So them not putting out information on where I could park until 5 days before the race was just absolutely disgusting. It caused an incredible hardship for me trying to figure out, do I need to take vacation time? But they're not working with the community. And again, you know, they might be profiting. I don't know if the businesses in East Troy profit or not, with people not being able to get to them. But you know, somebody's making money off this event, and it's on the backs of the residents. So again, 42327 G2 and G3 cover mandatory denials, and both of those would be applicable in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Anybody else that would like to speak during citizen participation?
Okay, there we go. I'm Jamie, 3036 North Street. I'm gonna comment on the bike race, I guess. First, I'm glad that nobody honks on the square ever, because I'd have to take vacation every single day if that were the case. So thankfully that never happens. Anyways, I heard there was a complainer. I guess I know who it is now. To be honest, there's always a complainer. I think that's probably the only common thing that has ever happened with pretty much everything that ever happens. Someone always complains. You know, and this isn't unique to East Troy. This is, I mean, everywhere. This is kind of the state of the world right now. So whatever, but we've been doing this for 10 years, and every year there's a complainer. I mean, every year. It's a different one, but every year someone manages to do it. But, well, I mean, you guys did the square last year, and honestly, you did a fantastic job. But I don't know if you remember, while doing it, there were more than a few complainers, actually. But in the end, it turned out fantastic, and you know, I give you guys props for pushing through that and making that happen, because I don't think anybody can look at the square now and be like, holy cow, that was a bad idea, right? I mean, it's fantastic. So kudos to you guys for that. Anyways, you know, all this is to say that I think we can do great stuff together, and build a better community. But that there will always be complainers, and I guess that's just the way it is. Thanks.
Thanks, Jamie. Anybody else that would like to speak during citizen participation?
Okay, thank you. I'm Mike Pruka. I live in 1107 Drake Court, Mukwonago, Wisconsin. I'm here to support the bike race. I am a coach through NICA, which is the National Intercollegiate Cycling Association, which is a statewide organization for middle school to high school age kids. Some go through school, some are clubs. We happen to be a club. We pick up East Troy, Mukwonago, but we use the bike race, and we set up a booth, and we set up games, and we have our kids volunteer there, and just show them what the world of cycling can be after they leave high school. And we are a mountain bike team, but there's still other ways to ride their bikes and whatnot. So we use this as a way to get the word out about our club and draw new students and athletes in. We have racers, we have casual riders, we have all types of people that ride bikes for us. Coaches from all over, a lot from East Troy and all the other communities in the area. So I just wanted to show our support for that, and it's a great opportunity for us to get us out there in the world for people to see what we do and the kids we have, and give our kids a chance to volunteer and be good citizens for the community. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to speak during citizen participation?
Ellie Griffa, 2894 Main Street. I'm here to talk about the bike race, but I do want to make one note. Organics is spelled wrong on the agenda. There's an R in there, so just note it. I'd like to express support for the Tour of America's Dairyland bike race as a local business owner, community member, parent, and Chamber of Commerce director. As a business owner, tourists arriving from around the world support the local economy. As a community member, the amazing events the Chamber sponsors throughout the year showcase our village, and participation is irresistible. As a parent, watching my children's faces as they experience professional cycling and get their own chance to participate is unforgettable. As the entity responsible for encouraging tourism, Chamber board members have discussed the pros and cons and have overwhelmingly decided the dividends outweigh the inconveniences. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to speak during citizen participation?
Mike Verlee, West 2574 County Road ES, East Troy. I am a father of 4. All of our children participated in the race last year. I'm also representing SKC Mountain Bike Club. It was a really positive event for our family. My son Noah wore his 3rd place medal today, and a huge self-esteem boost. We just put his picture in a slideshow for his class. So positive experience all around. Sorry we were late.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to speak during citizen participation? Anybody else that would like to speak during citizen participation?
Anzus, N8305 Weber Lane. I guess I've been a part of this race since we first brought it to town, and that was like way before East Troy Brewery was even a thought in our minds. But it is just a really positive event, and just to see the excitement in the community and the kids races and stuff like that we've had, it's just worth it, and it's a good event. It's a good event for East Troy, and it's rare that a small town like East Troy can attract an event like this. So that's all.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to speak during citizen participation? Anyone else that would like to speak during citizen participation? Last time. Anybody else that would like to speak during citizen participation? If no, then I will close citizen participation and move on to consent agenda. One motion and a second will approve all the following items. Any item may be pulled from the list and voted on separately.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to miscellaneous business. East Troy Area Chamber of Commerce Tourism Report. Vanessa Lenz.
Good evening. I have this didn't make it into the packet, but I have hot off the press, some promos for our Memorial Day 4-day weekend event and the First Friday series. So I'm just gonna pass them around. Just a fun little excitement. We are just getting off the end of East Troy Lights, year 3. We started this event during COVID, and it's been an incredible run for East Troy. So I just wanted to start off by just showing a video. I know I've saw most of you at the light show, but just to give you a little memory of it.
Hold up, I am on my way, I'm in motion. Let's go to the ocean. Yeah, let's without freezing. Yeah, isn't that amazing? In Christmas times, we'll be chilling and having a good time. Doesn't matter if the snow is falling or the wind blows and the rain is pouring. It will always be Christmas in my heart. But this year I wanna hang out with my friends and family, making angels in the sand. You and me. Doesn't matter, it is Christmas in my heart. And I can promise Santa's coming to visit. No, he wouldn't miss this in Christmas times. Oh, and the sun said it is just getting better on a blanket with the skyline painted in blue. Ooh, yeah, that's what we do. We'll be chilling and having a good time. Doesn't matter, it is Christmas in my heart.
So I started out with that because nothing can really showcase the highlight of this year other than that video. Our light show is 100% community built. We partner with the schools, with local businesses. We have every level of the East Shore Community School District participating, 4K through 12. So it's really a magical event. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I did include a pretty thorough report, and I can go farther into anything you want to hear. But one thing I wanted to point out is this year we are entering a new era of community development. Because of our combined efforts, East Troy is forever a better place. Everyone in this room all of you guys should be patting yourselves on the back. East Troy has come so far, and I'm doing a lot of measuring in tens because I'm approaching my 10-year anniversary in this position. And 10 years ago, we had foreclosed buildings on our square, and you couldn't even imagine that today. So, I mean, that's truly an incredible thing. But every day, our world keeps changing. In order to compete, we need to continually leverage new tools, new abilities, new ideas to keep pushing East Troy to the forefront, not only to get noticed, but to create a more cohesive community. We've accomplished more since I've started with less money than almost any municipality in the state of Wisconsin. We work on a very tight budget. You guys do too. Our school district does, and we do a lot because we have a really strong community. We've remained strong and resilient despite numerous obstacles, including COVID, the biggest one. But the task isn't complete yet. Where 10 years ago, we weren't on the map, we are now, but we still aren't in the spotlight in the way that we want to be. East Troy is capable of more, but to go forward, we need to be bolder. We need to rid ourselves of baggage, and we need to work cohesively as a single unit, and we need to invest into growing our capabilities. We want to be the ones that take us there. Tourism in East Troy continues to positively impact the economy and community, and having a strong 2022 meant so much to our attractions, hospitality industry, and beyond. In 2023, we want to continue our efforts to drive people to visit East Troy all year long. And I kind of talked about the track record. We've achieved a lot of this success through heavily promoting our downtown with innovative marketing, using these chamber-sponsored events such as the East Troy Cycling Classic, which is part of a huge event. Day 2 of the Tour of America's Dairyland. It's the largest competitive cycling event in the United States. We've grown all of our legacy events, we call them, like the Corn and Brat Roast. It is now a 4-day event, which includes Brewfest. I just talked to people that come from all over. The A to Z Antique. She said she talked to people last year for the rummages. They were coming from across the entire state. So the things that we've had, and then of course, our community events such as First Fridays. These events draw crowds, not just from the regional area, but across the entire country. They show off our attractions, leading to return visits and repeated economic impact. Obviously, the lights was a very much anticipated event and a big highlight. We And you'll see the numbers in the room tax revenue. This year, we saw a 37% increase in room tax revenue from Q4 in 2022 above Q4 in 2020, and then a 25% increase above Q4 in 2019. And a big goal of ours was sort of, we're marketing East Troy as one of the coolest places in southeastern Wisconsin, because it is. But one of those big key moments was the New Year's Eve ball drop. And this year we added a second drop. We did a midnight drop and an 8 p.m. drop, which was family friendly. And that increased our attendance by more than 25% over last year. And for me, this is why I do what I do, seeing little kids in their pajamas and thinking how long that tradition could go on. Something like parade day. We all go to the square and the streets for the parade. This could be something that could, last forever. We partnered with Allen ICS, a local business, and then obviously the light show did so much to put East Troy front and center. And our showcase that we've been talking about is the Story in Midwest Living. That has a 3.2 million cross-audience platform. So that was, we're thrilled. And like I said, 10 years ago, we would not have been in Midwest Living unless it was for a town that was dying, So it's because of all of this work together. The square improvements have been incredible. I did highlight the billboard campaign, which I think was really successful. We worked with the Village of East Troy to run the billboard May 16th through October 9th, and then the chamber actually picked that up during the light show. We ran the light show billboard, and I put the details on the impressions, but it over-delivered. The busiest time was between May 16th and June 12th, and I think that's when everybody's really excited for summer and looking for stuff to do. And then I did also highlight another big part was our record summer. We had all of our major events back, breaking attendance records, and we really turned the dial on recovery in all corners of East Troy, including our area attractions such as the East Troy Electric Railroad. Alpine Valley Music Theater had a full slate of concerts. So we're just really looking forward to continuing things in 2023. And I can answer any questions or talk about anything further.
Great video. Find a way to get us I don't know who did the production, but it was incredible. Get a 30-second snippet of that. Let's try and get some kind of commercial going next year, because I think that was really, really done well. You do some incredible things for this community. You and the entire board really enjoy all of the events that you put on in that square. So thank you very much for doing all that work for us as our tourism entity.
Thank you. And we can't do it without the support of the village board. When we came with some of these ideas, like a light show, we didn't know really what we could do. And being able to have that approval and the support of the businesses and the schools saying, yeah, let's get on it, and people jumping in to help. Doug helped this year. We had an issue with the big tree, and he came and hung the lights, the DPW. There was just so many people that came from all directions to make it happen. It's a huge, huge undertaking. Another thing I didn't mention is that we launched a candy cane adventure, which we're hoping to continue to expand upon, but we worked with the school district. The East Troy PTO sponsored. Each kid in the school district got a wand, and then they could go around and use them to control the interactive candy canes. There were games. One of them was Pong, so they got to play that with the tunnels. And then they played Simon Says with some of the buildings. So really building that interactive level. And that's sort of what we're trying to point out is we're trying to look to the next thing and keep building and being in the forefront versus, some of the other places are kind of copying what we're doing. And we want to be, ahead, doing things that they can't do.
I agree with you. It's been a partnership that really makes all this stuff work. It's a chamber and what their incredible efforts, what you guys do toward all the events, and then coming in front of us and identifying that we should do this together, right? But one of the things we've never done is we've never actually formally done anything to solidify that. So we're going to try and do this year is maybe we're going to have our attorneys draw up an agreement over the tourism entity part of things. So we can continue that process and continue that relationship. One of the things that we will have included in that agreement will be somebody from the village. Doesn't have to necessarily be a board member, just a person appointed by the president to be a part of the board for the chamber. So that'll probably be part of our next steps to continue that partnership.
Okay.
I was just looking at Lori's graph. I mean, you talked about COVID, and I don't know if, I think a variation of this graph's in the packet. I mean, the lowest point is 99, and I guess, I don't know if that's when we started doing room tax or as far back as our data. The second lowest is 2015, and the third lowest is 2020. And so, you know, the fact that in 2 years you got us back up to, you know, our peak, basically our peak, off by maybe 1,000 or 2, of 2018 is a big deal. I mean, to come back from, I mean, I know the railroad had reductions, and you know, we had other challenges, and people have come out to these events. I know the kids loved what you talked about with the lights, the Q4 growth. So yeah, I think the more that we can figure out the marketing of it, I also think that there's an opportunity for us to find other ways of bringing in some of this money indirectly too, like some of the larger businesses in the community. How do, you know, as we're growing that business park, how do, you know, they know all sorts of, we have people who have international connections. You know, what do they want to see? Can we get some of that? And, you know, how do we do things in Q1, I guess when we're about to get half an inch of ice? I don't know, maybe we need an ice skate. I know people love at Booth Lake, the ice skating. You know, how do we continue to, as you said, build on that momentum? So this is great. And times where it's like, you know, we closed down for the summer, or sorry, closed down for the winter, we're only open in the summer, that sort of thing. I think this is great.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we wanted to do the light show, was to, you know, extend that. We do really good during third quarter, but it was pretty much dead in the winter. We wanted something. And then we added events every weekend to sort of expand that, so it was bigger and busier. And, you know, we got a lot of positive feedback from the businesses on the square, as well as the community and visitors.
Can you talk a little bit about, I was just looking at your handouts here. I know, like, we've had, I guess, some other changes. And I know there's other events on that the chamber doesn't do on the square, like the Knights of Columbus.
And the band concerts
Yeah,
are very
the band,
popular, and those
yeah.
will be back this summer.
Yeah. So can you talk though a little bit about like this and, you know, farmers market and things like that? I wasn't sure if the farmers market was coming back on the square.
So we will have vendors during our First Friday series, but the farmers market is actually moving to Honey Creek Collective, which is the former location of Michael Fields. We tried the market in so many different iterations. Our most successful was actually during COVID when we did the online market, but that took all of us volunteering every single, we couldn't do it with normal operations. So I struggled because the market is something I really love, and we couldn't find the right fit for it. But when Honey Creek Collective came about, we kind of started working and did sort of a training wheels year for them. And now they're going to be taking over our market vendors. That's not to say that other people can't do something else, but the farmers market in the way that it was will be at Honey Creek Collective. Quinta, Milwaukee is actually growing on the farm there, and so they'll have produce there every single week, which is really exciting. So I think it's a really good spot for it to, excuse the pun, but grow.
Anyone have any other questions for Vanessa on her tourism report? So, you know, I made the comment about doing something with writing a formal agreement. We've never done that. We've always just identified verbally that the chamber was our tourism entity. So I'd make a motion that we have our village attorney draft up an agreement between us and the chamber, which identifies that we're exchanging our hotel dollars, 70% of it, for them being our tourism entity, and that in that agreement there would be verbiage in there that identifies a village representative appointed by the board to that role.
I second that. Absolutely.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, let's move on to consideration of granting, page 2, special event permit to the East Troy Chamber of Commerce for East Troy Cycling Classic. on the Village Square on Friday, June 16th. Start with that one. Let's go with all of them. Permit for bike race on surrounding streets for June 16th. Also, application for temporary Class B liquor license for June 16th. And all permits contingent upon the list of 4 different items.
Vanessa, can you address some of the comments from citizen participation?
Yeah, so I'm sorry that you had such a terrible experience. We did, this is our 10th year doing the race. We've done it for 9 years. We had 2 years off for COVID. When the village redid the square, which we think is incredible, we had to come up with a different route. And your street's beautiful. And Toad came in, and we have some reps from Toad here, and we tried to figure out the best route. We couldn't use the route that we had used for so long. And that route, the residents had gotten used to it, and, we had already gotten a really good system because of the new islands on the square. So we were forced to change the route, and changing that route, we had to change everything that we did. We did send letters out, but we're finding, and you'll see in the packet, now I have a new communication system in which we're gonna have multiple letters and a public input session, just so people don't have a situation in which they aren't able to reach us or be able to get information. Because we've already have 1 year under our belts, we have the parking situation figured out. I did try to work with people. I had one resident on Main Street. I helped her move her kids' car seats across the street. I handmade parking signs for people. We did have a golf cart shuttle going around all day for anybody that wanted to get rides to their cars. And we I understand that it is an inconvenience for some of the people living on the route, but we do feel the benefits far outweigh those inconveniences. Being a village of 4,000 people, being day 2 of the Tour of America's Dairyland is marketing that you can't buy. You cannot buy it. I went to the Governor's Conference on Tourism last year, and Bill, the director of Toad, was there talking about how to become a recreational community. And one of the things they were saying is to host an event like the bike race, which we've already been on the forefront of doing 9 years ago. There are different benefits that aren't just the day of the bike race. There's the marketing. There's also, we have a kids race, which the Verleys kind of talked about. We have around 200 kids that participate in that race. A lot of them are locals. It's a really, really positive. They see good role models while they're cycling around and seeing these cyclists. We have around 500 cyclists from around the world. We do have a hand cycling race. There are a lot of veterans that participate in that hand cycling race. We're trying to build it. I think Bill said it's probably going to be the biggest that we've had yet. Suzanne, do you want to?
Yeah, so as far as the hand cycle race goes, there's a proposal made that 2 days before that, it's going to be the World Championship qualifier race in Janesville for it. So that'll just increase our number of paracyclists that will be there for that day, because they'll just come for the whole series then. Their series is 5 days long, and they'll come for that whole 5 days series of racing. So that's the paracycling. Some of the other points that were made, like the horn honking, we can definitely take care of that. We could just tell our drivers not to be honking the horn the whole day. Only honk when you see somebody crossing the road or somebody that you need to raise awareness to, not just honking to make noise. For the sake of honking. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Bikes on the sidewalk, we'll put out signs this year that say no bikes on the sidewalk. We can also, from a bike racing standpoint, if you're on the sidewalk, we can disqualify the riders. They can't start their race. They'll be out of the race if it's after the race. Their placing for the day would be disqualified from it. So there are things that we can communicate out to the riders, and there are remedies to the bikes on the sidewalk. It's not just in East Troy that we've had these issues. We were on Brady Street and near downtown Milwaukee last year, and it was a big problem there, and we worked through it. But it's something that we can definitely work through for that. As far as watering the lawns and such, I know that there was one person who was spraying water out into the road because it was a very hot day, And we just asked them not to do that because it wasn't the lawn. The lawns are fine because that's not where the water's spraying, but we asked them not to because it was heading into the corner. Tires on the bikes would have been wet, and we just didn't want that. And then I think Vanessa has talked a little bit more about the parking. Parking is definitely something that was experienced last year. So I think even just like maybe a zone, like if you live here, this is where your parking is going to be. If you live here, this is where your best bet for parking is going to be. The golf cart that she has, we can attach a phone number to that golf cart that goes out in the communications that if you need a ride to your car because your car's already parked, or if you need a ride after you've parked your car and need to get back to your house in the morning before we start setting up, that we could attach a phone number to it. It won't be instantaneous, but it'll be there. If there's an emergency on the course, we shut down the course, we shut down the racing, we open up the roads for any kind of ambulance, fire trucks, or anything that needs to come onto the course. So, we in our year, we get one every 2 or 3 years where we actually have to shut down a race, let somebody onto the course, let an ambulance onto the course, and then we start our races back up. If we have to cancel the race because it's on the course for an hour, so be it. That's, safety is first in those regards. Yeah, any kind of questions that you guys might have from me from the Toad standpoint of view?
So in years past, we've seen a couple of routes, not just one identified.
Yeah.
Have you addressed a secondary route yet?
Yeah, we have not. So the way that the square flows now with the islands in there, there's really only one way to enter and exit those, and this is the route that allows for that. We had looked at another route, kind of mirror our current route, and it was too short. The roads were too tight on the backside. I think that's Austin, maybe, is that?
Austin Street.
Yeah, Austin Street was just kind of too narrow. We had those apartments there, and then what would be our kind of last two turns was too tight, and there's a lot of trees on the backside of it, and the road pavement, it's kind of like off camber, and it wouldn't suit the needs for safe racing, like the current course does. And then just the way that the islands are, we can't really get around any place unless we flow the way we flow through those islands.
I just have one question. So is there a point of contact on the race day that we could call, or a phone number available
Yeah, so
in case we have
there's
issues?
4 of us who are, the managing partners of the Tour of America's Dairyland, and you could have all 4 of our numbers.
And that's something too, Toad's done this in major cities for a long time, so they've had like funerals that they've had to work around. So even if that day you have stuff, we can work around it.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
know,
yeah,
they have a fire station.
we have our
that
day
they have
after
to get
is
out.
Troy. In Grafton, the fire station is enclosed in the course, and so we work around it. We work with the fire department there, and we work through it. So we know the impact that we bring into a city or into a village. We know that we are bringing quite a show into the village, and we know that it just does disrupt the day. But with that, we're also very open to communicating, setting up plans ahead of time, or on the fly if we need to work around issues that come up.
I'm sorry, I missed, what was your name, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry, my name's Andrew Fry.
Andrew Fry?
Yes.
And thank you very much for coming up and speaking, because you've answered a few questions that I've already had. But one of the concerns that I have is, and I understand, I've been around for most of these bike races, and my opinion is, as a board, our responsibility is to the citizens first, and also to the chamber and the promotion of the village. So I understand that. But and you've answered a lot of questions tonight, more so than I've ever heard, and I appreciate that. But what I thought might help is if we could get these people together with the concerns village, the people, the citizens that have concerns, and sit down and discuss it so that they can meet face to face and talk about their problems.
You're thinking like a committee of the whole type of thing?
Exactly. If they want to come into the village, they can be contacted. the citizens can come in and discuss these things and try to work these out instead of just sending letters or putting flyers in the door handles. You know, it just, that doesn't always work.
Didn't I see there was a Q&A session at the brewery?
Yeah, we did add a Q&A session. It's really tricky. I did talk to somebody on the race route who owns a business and is a resident, and he's a former village trustee. And he advised early multiple contacts. And so it's tricky because we want to get people early enough so they can plan, but also not too early because they forget. So we set the village or the planning Q&A session in May, but if that, based on feedback, we can bump it earlier. But we do have 2 separate letters, and then the day before is the going on the door, just as a reminder.
And
So
that was a
I think that's a great way to address any issues between the chamber and or the bike racers. But we're really here to talk about what we do and what decisions we're going to make as a village board for the people in the community. So what I would propose doing is probably tabling this until we can do a committee of the whole next meeting, maybe. And Andrew, would you be available for another meeting if we can?
Yeah.
And what we would do is we would identify every single address that's on that route and make sure that each one of those individuals gets a letter and an invitation to that meeting so they can express, and business owners, they can express their concerns or appreciation for the race, whatever it may be. But I think that this may be a decision for the village board through a committee of the whole meeting might be the best route.
Is that in 2 weeks?
Can we have other supporters of the, I mean, because it affects, I know it affects the people on the route, but it also affects the people living in the village.
Oh yeah, this is a committee of the whole. This is everybody.
yeah.
But the people that are directly on that route, they'll get individual letters to
Yeah.
invite them to the meeting personally. But anybody else that's within the community, I'm more than happy to have everybody here to talk about it. We want to make sure we have enough of a representation of everybody that's in that route and everybody that's going to be affected by the race to be able to voice their opinions, maybe talk about it. We could talk through it. Andrew, you did great today. Really, as Forty said, you've answered better than anybody that we've heard from Toad so far. And not that anything against Toad at all, but you know, you've had some answers, and it's great. So we'd like to do that at a larger forum if we can.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, and I don't know if it would be helpful, but I definitely can come back for this committee of the whole, but if it's helpful, I could give my phone number or an email address tonight that we could put that out. Even like with the letter for the committee of the whole, like, hey, you can't come to the committee of the whole, you can still talk with somebody. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but.
Can we have people write in if they can't make it?
Our citizen participation identifies in-person.
I know that
for
we've done that in the past, but I don't know.
Yeah,
what
we did
the-
it through COVID, but then, you know, that changed because COVID's no longer that effectual.
For legal public hearings, it's allowed as well legally when we are required to have a public hearing. So that might be what you're thinking of. But yeah, during COVID, we did that because of the challenges with people participating.
Vanessa, I'd say, you know, if somebody has a very strong opinion one way or the other and they want to, you know, and they can't be here, they can always email any of us. You know, we read all of those and, you know, factor in. Many times we're going through something, I'm reading through an email here that somebody has, so happy to hear from that. I think, you know, for when you come back, I heard a lot of, well, we could do this, and these are all great ideas. I think a draft document or something for the residents to see, you know, and you don't have to give us your phone number right now, I don't think, but, you know, that it's like, yes, this is what's gonna, you know, we're gonna have parking zones roughly here, here, and here. You know, I like
And-
that idea. No, go ahead.
Sorry, that is in the packet.
Okay.
The drafts of the letters, the date of the public info session, and the new route, it's all in there, and the parking.
And again, that works great for the communication that needs to happen between the chamber, Toad, and the residents. But, you know, as a governing body, we have to represent the people that live in the community, and that's why I think that just having a COW meeting on it might be the best and most successful way to take care of that.
Are you proposing this as a separate meeting, like the fourth Monday, or incorporated with the first meeting in March?
I think we can incorporate in the first Monday, or first meeting in March.
Okay, so that would be March 6th.
Yes, so I'd make a motion to table this to a Cal meeting for the March 6th meeting.
With a go back to normal session for possible approval?
Yes, definitely going back into normal session for possible approval.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to Ellers 22 Financial Management Plan, Financial Presentation, and related direction to staff. Brian?
Scott?
You're not doing anything tomorrow, are you, Lori?
Always happens that way. Okay, thank you all for having me here. Primarily, we're here to kind of talk about final touches on the operating and CIP portion of the financial management plan for 2022.
I've been waiting for this all week.
And what we're kind of getting to there is just ultimately kind of final levy and things like that, and then consideration for 2023 borrowing, and I'll kind of get into that. But then the second focus was the utilities. So this is going to be kind of a lengthier discussion on the utilities, only to kind of see right now where it's going, and then give you a few options in terms of your decision framework. So here on the next slide, I kind of just went through that, but so if we go further, just kind of another point in that there was an increase in terms of where your levy was, but understand too that you had a built-in TID closure that increased your allowable levy. And ultimately, when we're looking at our future changes in levy, one of our biggest discussion points was now you've built in that capacity, and we're taking our max allowable. The only future consideration will be where we go with debt, and then also as your capital levy and levy limits restrict your operating levy, that capital levy might have to go down to make up for the operating levy. And so that's all been kind of the touch points that we've went through late last year, but just to kind of keep in mind as we start going into the 2023 financial management plan, the 2023 borrowing, is to kind of understand where all of these roads kind of converge. But I just kind of wanted to reiterate ultimately how we got here, and then kind of where we're going when we get into that planning process. For the 2023 capital improvement plan, these were the components that we had identified, and this was, November of last year. But these were the projects that we had identified for potential 2023 geo bonding. This is by no means saying, hey, we're borrowing for these immediately. This is me saying, are we borrowing this year? And so this does not have to be, discussed at length tonight. As you know, we usually have 2 to 3 meetings in order to do a borrowing. That at minimum have to do 2, the set sail and final award. But we could have a third meeting where we just kind of do the planning process in terms of what projects are we including, et cetera. So this was in here to just kind of be a reminder that you had identified a 2023 borrowing. A lot of communities borrow in spring, so just know too that a lot of times right now there's kind of a low supply, so a high demand. So generally, the interest rates have been favorable. There's been a little bit of a bump from last week to this week, I will say, of about 25 basis points, which we hadn't seen until until like late summer last year. But I think there's a concern at the next, Fed meeting, what could happen in terms of rates, and then over the summer, things with the economy. So just kind of wanted to put this on your radar. Up to you guys to decide, what are the projects that we're borrowing, and then kind of when we want to borrow. So again, we can have this on a different agenda in terms of the planning meeting, and then kind of after that point, do our set sale and final award if you're moving forward with borrowing. To get in, sorry.
How fast do we need to move on that? Because those are both for Highway 20.
So the project is let May 9th, I think. So maybe we'll know by the June meeting what our portion of the bids came in at. I don't know how quick DOT will move on something like that.
When is the proposed starting?
July.
So money by July. So just know it's about 90 days at the most to kind of close a transaction from these are the dollars we need. 60 days we can probably do as well. But if you kind of think 3 months out, we always tell clients that's when you should at least tell us that, hey, we're going to be borrowing for this at this time. So if we want the money late June, then we should probably have, the plan meeting or to identify a dollar amount, maybe in May or April.
And you might be saying that about the planning because of my reference in an email after we had talked about the projects. Jason, is School Street 2025 now?
2024.
Okay, so it is correct in there. I was thinking it was 2025.
Is Lynch working on that plan
Sorry
already?
about that.
Oh, no, that's okay.
He has a proposal together for me. I'll probably be bringing that to the next meeting to get it designed in 23 for 24 construction.
So he's gonna have all-inclusive costs in that then?
There'll be an opinion of costs.
So we'll be able to go to
Yes.
them with the number then? Oh,
Yes.
And we can also, your set sale, if you don't recall, your set sale resolution for the borrowing says a maximum amount of X, and then you can bring that down up to 2 weeks before sale. We just don't want to send out the official statement with, a low number or excruciatingly high number, of course, because you don't want to overborrow. But you don't want to be low, obviously. But 2 weeks before the sale, so like if you got final numbers in May or something, we'd be safe.
I would hope we could get the numbers post bid around the beginning of June.
And we've already ordered the hydrants, right?
Correct.
So. So then for the utilities, I'm going to talk about sewer first. Sewer utilities, so we always look historically first, then we'll kind of identify your future capital picture, and then kind of where we're going with potential rate adjustments. And so utilities across the board are capital intensive, and I mean that for two reasons. One, it costs a lot of money to get water from its sourcing to your faucet. There's a lot of pipes, there's a lot of pumps, there's a lot of storage. So these cost a lot to get those assets in the ground. They also cost a lot to maintain. So you have volatile maintenance expense accounts. Specifically, you can kind of see this here in example for the sewer utility. If you were to look left to right, 2018 through 2023, and that top line, operating and maintenance, that just identifies your operating and maintenance expenses year over year. So typically, you're kind of tracking, 800,000 if you look at 2018, 2020, and 2021. 2019, you did have a jump in expenses. Some of that was maintenance, some of that was, I'm assuming planning for some of the projects that happened in 2020. But that said, when you look at 2023's budget being 933,000, we did, when we go into the future, kind of take that as, all right, this is your starting point, and we're just launching from that. and we kind of track with an average inflation. But just know, if you're to drop down, 2024 to a lower number, obviously your rates would benefit from that. So I just kind of wanted to keep that in terms of context when we get into the future slides here. But just know what this slide depicts is two ways that you can look at building what your rates should be. The AWWA says you can look at it on a cash basis or a utility basis. Cash basis just looks at all your cash expenses. Utility basis subtracts your debt and cash funded capital for depreciation and a rate of return. All it is to say, this is two ways to say, are our rates adequate? So utility basis kind of been looking good, but on a cash basis, those cash expenditures for capital fluctuate quite a bit. So that's why you'll see a large swings there. So that's another reason why we look at it under two ways. But generally speaking, since our 2019 increase, the utility's been in a healthy position. And then for the some of the historical financial performance benchmarks, in terms of strengths, you're at healthy reserves. Again, this was kind of planned with that 2019 sewer rate study, so that's kind of why you see that bump, but also that we're also ensuring that we were ahead of schedule for future adjustments as well. So making sure that we're kind of resetting our clock in terms of rate adjustments, so you do have healthy reserves in the sewer utility. In terms of financial performance that we'd identify as a weakness is, those volatile maintenance expenses. Again, if you recall from 2 slides ago, the 2019 O&M, when that spiked, that drops your cash available for debt, and that did get down to about your debt payment at that time. So the one thing to know is that there is reprieve happening, with that 2008 debt dropping off, and I believe that was for your plant, because that's a pretty significant debt payment at about $400,000, but that's dropping off in 2027. So in terms of where you need to be, that will drop off. Upcoming projects, the important point there is that there aren't any near future borrowing. The only ones that we identified in the financial management plan was for the sewer jetter in 2026. But that said, in our discussions with village staff, that if that 2008 project for your plant is something that might need to be done again in terms of upgrades, that would be something to consider in terms of the future. Is that 27 or is that beyond? So the one thing that all I would just say is, if there's, a large snowball coming down the hill, and we want to look beyond 5 years to just kind of start planning for that. The one thing that I'll note though is, I believe with phosphorus, you guys are taking the annual payment for water quality training. Yeah. So you have kind of tackled some of those phosphorus items, which a lot of communities are struggling with in terms of how do we handle that. So just know that was built into your rates as well when we did the rate study. In terms of where we're going, right now I've shown it with no adjustments, and this isn't to be a recommendation to say don't do anything for 10 years. This is to give you a picture of what it looks like not doing anything, and then also just identifying that there is no future project out there, and understand maybe what's our capacity without doing anything for future debt service. And so to answer that question, you would look at 2028 and at the net annual cash flow, which is the largest number in this very number-y chart. But that is 600,000. So just identifying that, all right, you take 25% kind of away from that. Let's just say it's 500,000. That's probably your capacity for new debt at these rates and at this assumed operating and maintenance expense. The other thing that I would identify is, how do we feel about the operating and maintenance expense in the future going at 933,000, and then we just kind of leap that forward by 2% each year. If that needs to be higher, then we should look at that. But then also just in terms of rates, generally we say try to do an inflationary increase either every year or every other year. And so that would be something to kind of consider going forward, and that would be my recommendation for the sewer utility. You're fine for this year, and then the other thing to just note is that in terms of reserves, if you look at the bottom of this chart, it does say, you know, you're allowing those reserves to drop down in this case, which you are above the target. So you're certainly able to do. If you're to go back to kind of see what that target would be, generally that's right about the $2.2 million number. So again, it's kind of, if there's a future project out there, we should try to identify that in the future, because the one biggest thing you don't want to do is do nothing for 5 years. 2028 comes around and we do have that big project. Now we're going to have another, 15, 20% increase when we could have been kind of building towards something. So that's kind of all I had for the sewer utility. Are there any questions on the sewer utility before?
My question would be to Jason, do you agree with what is being said here? I mean, do you foresee a malfunction?
So as far as another big project, yeah, I don't think there'll be ever a shortage to find that big project. While I don't think next time around it'll be the sewer plant. In our current DNR permit, we have not been asked to do a facilities update, which is kind of usually the first step to a plant upgrade. So DNR has not required that. They may in our next 5-year permit, not sure. But I could see a lift station need potentially maybe School Street as being the next big ticket item. So
I thought we redid School Street.
that was South Street.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But what I would like to do in '24 is kind of similar to what we're doing in the water utility in '23, kind of a master plan. So I think that'll help us identify some of those big projects.
Would that also then include a storage facility?
You're talking about sludge?
Tower?
That'll be in the water master plan. Yeah, I don't know that will come back. It depends on development, really.
So Brian, should we put a plug figure in now and then refine it? I mean, just, it's probably not as big as a plant, but we know it's not, I think the answer, Jason says, the answer is not zero.
Right. So the last lift station we constructed was $1 million, and that was in 2019. So, maybe that's 1.3 by now.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. What year would you say?
Probably that loan is done in 27, so probably 28.
Yeah, we can put in a plug for that. Any further questions on the sewer? Okay, we can go on to water. So this is in a similar layout to sewer. Looking through the historical performance again, water utilities having kind of the same things happen in terms of there's increasing O&M expenses, but just understand too that this is different from the sewer utility in that you're regulated. And so the PSC here, as you'll kind of see, I've changed this chart. They don't look at it both ways. They only look at it the one way. They say they will look at your debt profile, but as we know from the last rate case, they cared more about their benchmarking than they did debt profiles. So that said, it is imperative to kind of understand where they are standing in terms of how their math is derived, and so they look at it on this utility basis. And so while it might show various needs for rate cases, I would say that the water utility should be doing something come in the future. As we look at it both ways, you can see that the cash is higher, but the PSCs is a little lower. So that said, when we look at 22 and 23 kind of being in line with each other, I would say there's something that should be done, and we'll kind of get to where I would recommend the utility go. So in terms of historical financial performance, again, the water utility did a recent rate case adjustment in 2019 in where there's been kind of that fluctuation in reserves. But that said, it's has been declining overall over the past 5 years. So with the PSC, this tends to happen in that when they don't look at it on a cash basis, you can't always build in your full debt service based on whatever their decision may be in your rate case. In terms of weaknesses, there's been those volatile maintenance expenses have kind of put a drag on your all-in debt coverage and has dropped it down, and therefore those dips below your debt service are just identifying before any cash funded capital, you're already decreasing your reserves.
Is this water and sewer for that all-in?
Nope, that's just water by
Okay.
itself. All in is meaning that's not your bond covenant coverage. That's everything. So bond covenant coverage doesn't include your pilot payment, but that's a cash expense for the utility.
I hear what you're saying, but that's why we have math.
Okay. That's awesome.
We really need somebody else.
In terms of the upcoming projects, we had a few more here. So again, the point is not to understand and memorize what each project is, but more so to just say that we've identified certain projects happening in the near term, and more so on the water side than the sewer side. And so as you saw from an earlier slide, those were included in your 2023 borrowing. So if we're moving forward with those, again, all the more reason water utilities should be doing something. Okay, so the water, where are we going? I did look at this on two approaches. Public Service Commission only allows you certain windows of opportunity to increase your rates. You can do a conventional rate case at any time, but that kind of puts everything in back to their benchmark rate of return, unless you're able to convince them elsewise. And doing so in this instance would be about a 22% increase to rates. And this is an 8-month process in terms of how long it takes for a conventional rate case. And that's being generous to the PSC, probably more of a 10 to 12-month process. And so we do a lot of these each year. Right now we're doing about 13 a year. They're getting better because they've hired more people, but they still haven't brought that number down. So it's just, if you're looking for an increase to kind of reset everything and you want it done for January, kind of getting within that budget cycle, it is best to start that sooner rather than later. That's the only reason I bring up the timing. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is kind of this all-in debt coverage as I highlight here. You do have some debt dropping off from 23 to 24, but that was planned to be kind of rebooted with the 2023 borrowing, meaning we're adding 100,000 of debt to kind of stay at that same level. And so you aren't provided that kind of reprieve in terms of that debt dropping off. It's going to get replaced by the other projects that you're tackling within the water utility. So again, this kind of gets you back to what we'd call a healthy all-in debt coverage. The other options you would have in terms of a conventional rate case and ways to bring down rates is you do have the ability to lower that pilot payment. And one of the problems with that is that it's less cost for the water utility, but that's less revenue for the general fund. Your water utility is probably one of the highest taxpayers in the village, and so you want to just kind of keep that in mind if that were ever to be a consideration, but just know it can be an option. And then going down, I wanted to show, or to the next slide, there's kind of some other options here as well in terms of how do we navigate these windows of opportunity. So we could request a lower rate of return. What I just showed was their benchmark rate of return to get to a 22%. We could request a lower rate of return. The last rate case, we had some trouble getting them to allow for some of the TID debt to be considered TID debt, even though the TID couldn't always support it. But the PSC basically did not take that request, so we ended up refunding the debt from revenue to GO. So although it's all an alternative and out there, it's not a guarantee. So the second bullet point here is that you could use the simplified rate case process to implement rates over time. But the one thing that I just wanted to say is that you may want to actually use more debt instead of cash because your O&M expenses have already caught up to your current rates, and so you're going to be building slower in not doing a full rate case. So you can only do those simplifieds once a year. But the other point that we found out on Wednesday was that you are eligible now. Actually, we knew that before Wednesday, but what we found out on Wednesday is that the PSC announced that simplified rate case is 8%. It's typically 3%. So that's a big change, and that can be a big advantage. So this is something I kind of wanted to show the board on
Is
the
that
next.
just for 1 year, or is that going forward?
No, they only set it for 1 year at a time.
I guess,
I want to, well, sorry, I just want to be clear. It goes up 8 and then it comes back down if you don't go back, or it goes up 8 and then it stays?
No, it's based off of CPI and their benchmark rate of return. So the CPI was 7.7. They've never increased beyond CPI, but I think they got enough people complaining that they did this year. So it kind of frightens me what they'll do next year. But I'm going to guess it goes back down to 3%.
But
That's not, so I'm just saying, I'm, my rate is, X per gallon.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're saying is then if I do the simplified, it's 1.08 X per gallon. And I'm asking, then the next year, does it go back to 1.0 or does it stay at 1.8?
No, that's your
the new rate.
rates.
Okay,
Yep.
That was, I think what you were saying too. I was confused when you said, yeah, I get the net delta each year, the compounding rate changes based upon CPI, but it's not like we lose the increase.
No, sorry, the PSC decides what the simplified rate adjustment is 1 year at a time. So like, it won't always be 8% is my point. Yep, sorry.
boy, it must be nice to have a second language.
Yeah.
hasn't it historically been 3% for some time?
It's been 3% for at least 12 years that we could find on their online records, and then it was 4.5 last year.
I think I did find that we did a simplified back in 13 or 14 maybe. And then
don't know
in
when it was.
18 and 19, we went through the 2 rate cases.
Well,
Well, I guess it was one case.
2017, we did a full rate case.
And then we had to go back in
and
19.
adjust in 19, which they actually lowered in 19, I
Right.
believe. Yeah.
What's gonna, I guess my question is, what's gonna be the easiest for the general population to accept?
A
To be
little
able
bit
to
at
pay
a
for?
time.
Not a 22% increase?
Well, let's just look at it because there's some consideration in terms of that decision. So what I show here is if you were to do the simplified approach, this is what I would recommend in terms of how many of them you do. Not that you commit to them now for the next 5 years, but just saying this is what you would need to kind of get to the same position that the full rate case brings you. So an 8% for 2023, and then 3% for the next 4 years. Understand I've calculated the rate revenues on a half-year implementation, meaning it takes about 45 days for the simplified to close. And so you probably not implement until, let's just call it June or July. But with that said, ultimately getting to about $1 million in terms of operating revenues. And with that, that gets you to the healthy cash position or kind of healthy coverage. But the one concern would be is other future projects. So this kind of builds to 2028, but then we don't have a CIP beyond that. So that just take that as an understanding of there could be future increases needed. This is just shown to say, how long does it take to get to basically that 22% increase? And ultimately, we can go to the combined rate impact. So I just show this as the 22% increase so that it's just kind of easy to understand, and with nothing being done to sewer. So really just focusing on 2024, that row here is that a 22% increase on your volumetric charge, and your fixed charges would result in about a $25 change per quarter for the water bill, and $100 per year for a combined utility bill for water and sewer. And this is based off an average residential user, so 15,000 gallons a quarter and a 5/8 or 3/4 inch meter. So based off of those charges that those customers see and that volume use. But that said, on an MHI basis, that's about 2% of, someone who's earning, a household who's earning 70,000 per year. The AWWA benchmark is about 2% per utility, so you don't want to really see that go above 4%. Again, the MHI is frozen for this graph, so take that into consideration as well. I personally don't like the MHI, kind of look at affordability, so on the next slide, I do show, I guess 2 slides, but I'll talk about this slide first. This is what that looks like, that 22%, or 46 per month or 138 per quarter, what that bill looks like against a comparison group. So the University of North Carolina has this tool online that kind of puts you in a comparison group with other utilities. Pay attention to the top left dial, and that just looks at other utilities within a 50-mile distance. That 22% still puts you within the middle 50% of other utilities in this comparison group. So just one thing in terms of how would that impact us against our neighbors. Everybody always wants to know. The other thing to note is it would probably even be better than this, because this is from the University of North Carolina, is a little outdated in this tool, and this is from 9/1/2020. This was the chart I was trying to jump ahead to. I apologize. But this is a look at your affordability and by income level. So it's an important consideration when you're looking at utility rates to identify, well, MHI is one benchmark, but not everybody makes that income. And so understanding what percentage of income based on certain income levels. And so I'd urge you to look at, the lower income brackets here in terms of 35,000 or less. And that's where you start to kind of get into higher percentages. And this is all held at the same amounts. That said, typically, those that are in the 15,000 or lower are generally single individual households on a fixed income, and meaning that they probably are using less usage too. So that percentage might flatten out a bit, but these are considerations that if you were to go in for a full rate case, those items could be adjusted. For example, if you wanted to adjust in terms of a cheaper tier for the first couple thousand, et cetera, things like that. We've done that in other communities in the state, just to kind of control how those lower income brackets are handled. So just kind of take that into consideration. Just know through a simplified rate case, you can't tackle those items. You have to do that through a conventional rate case.
Where's this data from?
Your U.S. Census Bureau's American Community Survey.
Is there any way we can get to a more specific amount based upon our utility billing?
In terms of, you wouldn't be able to one-to-one match income to, because that isn't provided with your utility bill, right? We could identify how many users get out of a certain, like if I were to say it's 3,000 per month or something like that, we could identify how many get out of that, meaning how many don't as well.
Yeah, I'm also trying to think about like if they're on government assistance.
Right.
So whether it's, they're on social security or they're on disability, and we could, we would know based on some of that information also their age,
Mm.
and things like that. And, you wouldn't be able to make, well, I know for sure this one person, they have no other income source, but you could start to draw a little bit better pattern
Right.
here. But I guess though, to your point, it's meaningless if we do the simplified rate case.
So Brian, the simplified rate case, I was looking on the PSC's website today, and much like you said, 45 days from the application being submitted, but how long does it take to get an application submitted for a simplified?
So you have to get your notice out and then filed. The application's very easy. We can do it for the village, or I can kind of teach a person to fish. And typically it's like a few clicks on their website in order to get through their application, and it's automatically generated along with the customer notice. And then you have to publish that customer notice, and then you can file the application the next day. And then it's 45 days from that date. So I just have to know what date it's publishing and what publication. And then, we can walk through that process. So, but the one thing is that the simplified may not be eligible for you with 2022's PSC annual report. And so right now you're eligible based off of your 2021 PSC annual report. So that would be another consideration. I'm guessing you're probably still eligible, but I can't be certain until I would see that.
And why do you think that we may not be, based off of 22's report? Just because you don't know, you haven't seen it.
Yeah. From that from that historical, it did say you were below benchmark rate of return. I'm guessing you're still eligible, but I'm not gonna sit here and say guaranteed you'll be eligible, because then you wait for that, and then all of a sudden you're not able to do the simplified. So if you're gonna do the simplified, my point is do it before that PSC annual report is released, just so you don't miss an eligibility window. And then on the next slide, I think is where I kind of get to those recommendations. So I've kind of covered that first checkpoint there, in that you're eligible now. That conventional rate case CRC is available always, and you may not need the full rate of return. That said, pretty close to it. We may be able to navigate that percentage down a little bit. But we should develop a timeline for this rate adjustment. And so I would welcome kind of feedback and consensus on action for that water increase, and only so that I may better assist the village, and village staff may kind of better move forward as well.
I mean, short of you fixing the PSC, I don't like a 22% increase as a one time. I don't think anybody does. I don't like the 8% is pretty strong too. But we also have some serious numbers to consider. I think we ought to do another, not the same one, but I think we ought to do another committee of the whole, and figure out some way. I don't think we need to ask Lori to send letters to everybody in the village. But find some way of posting that, and and people can email us comments and whatnot, but come to a Cal and talk through that, maybe have you here to address some of the detailed financials. We pull some of this up and try to explain that there's a fiscal cliff coming, and we've got to deal with that, and that cliff includes what we know. There's a lot of what we don't know, PFAS and all those other things. So we don't want to be caught short-handed. At the same time, we recognize inflation's a problem for everybody, and we don't want to turn around and go overboard with the 22% increase.
I think this is going to be cow is a great idea. Maybe just some educational information about this system. Everybody looks at the water as being a village issue, we keep on raising the rates when it's something we have no control over at all. And I think in education with the people that within the community to identify that, you know, PSC is the one that really says this is what it has to be, this is where you have to go with your numbers. Maybe even something that's part of that education about what other municipalities, everybody, well, you know, Village of East Troy water is just ridiculously expensive. Well, is it? What is it in comparison to neighboring communities and what everybody else is paying? It's just part of the process of having a water treatment plant and the utilities that we have in place. So we just have a lack of education in this community on what and where all those numbers come from.
Would you, it sounded like nothing to go out, but when I do something like that, typically it's, you know, we call it like a public information session or something like that, and I generally condense it to 4 slides, you know, and it's basically where we've been, what the impact is, and then that comparison group. So impact would be that rate, you know, kind of looking at your full bill as a change, and I could show that for the 8%. And then ultimately that comparison, and I actually wouldn't use the University of North Carolina at that point. The PSC provides like a Excel sheet that you have to manipulate in order to get to what your future bill looks like, but you could compare everybody in the county. So would it just be Walworth, or do you think it'd be helpful to grab any other county around that?
I think neighboring Waukesha County would be a great
Waukesha?
idea. If we
Okay.
can, yes.
No, I just wanted that insight otherwise. Okay.
And then I guess the question would be timing. So we talked about doing the committee of the whole for the bike race in 2 weeks. Is 4 weeks enough time? Is it too long?
That works for me.
And then, you know, we can make a decision based upon input or table it to the, you know, meeting after that. And that should give us time to then, if we decided to do a simplified case. I mean, I think the discussion is, do you want it all at once and you want us to do a big rate case and hit
Right.
sometime in 2024? Or do you want us to tier it? I think the other challenge that's going to be going on, just so you're aware, is in April, there's a referendum for the school district for property taxes. So this would be yet another item to discuss about
Right.
increases. So that's just going to be, there'll be some tension probably associated with that.
Understood. That would be March 20th, just to confirm, 4 weeks from now.
That's correct.
Okay. And then the final things is I'll be providing full documents. There's like a final financial management plan, final report, and the utilities are within that as well. So there's much more tables and charts to help you fall asleep.
Just briefly, yeah. Why didn't you have this for me last night? I was wide awake at like 2 in the morning. I really could have used it. I don't, you know.
This doesn't make you sleep. This excites you. Come on.
No. That's why I work in IT. So they keep giving me the budget for some reason. I guess what's the best way to get the word out with short of sending a letter to everybody? Is it just, you know, Chelsea putting some stuff out on social media and website, you know, some emails? Well, I know it's not going to reach everybody, but I mean, we put a notice in the paper and, you know, things like that, but.
When is the next newsletter? Is that coming out in March, maybe? Yeah, we'll have the March newsletter, we'll have social media, we'll have the website. We can put a notice in the paper. We can post it.
Even though the bills aren't going out till April, even some of Brian's educational material might be something we can send with it. That's a possibility.
Yeah, if we have no ones from the March 20th meeting, we might be able to include something.
You mean simplified educational material?
I think the really numbers dense spreadsheet is great.
I think it's also helpful to understand where the water comes from and where it comes out of and everything in between. You know, just understand that there are all these parts that break, you know, they don't last forever, you know, and unfortunately, this is how we have to pay for it.
Just remember, Jason does give tours.
Well, I think the other thing that's important that everybody remembers is we really haven't had an actual increase since 2017. That is a long time to go without an increase, and maybe generally, looking forward, we're better off going for simplifieds more often and doing these gradual increases, because nobody likes raising the rates. None of us do. Staff doesn't, the board doesn't, the community doesn't. But the problem is when we wait, then we end up with these bigger increases. And that's more painful. And I really can't think of many bills at my house that haven't went up since 2017.
Well, and not only did it not go up, it went down.
Is that it, Brian?
Yeah, that's all I had.
Thank you.
That's it.
Anybody have any other questions for Brian?
Brian, someday we'll invite you for something fun.
You know,
That's a
I
great
guess
idea.
one last comment from me would be, historically, our water utility has not performed as well as the sewer utility. So I really think that that's where we should be concentrating, it is on the water rather than both. You know, if that puts people's mind at ease. You know, people hear 8% and they think, oh, my bill's just automatically gonna go up 8%, and that's not necessarily the case, and that's gonna be, you know, key in trying to show people.
Yeah, and I think about 5-6 years ago, we were talking about how well that sewer was performing, that we were trying to find a way to take funds and transfer it toward the water, and we can't. That's the other thing that we need to utilize education for, is identify with people that this is not something that coincides. It's totally separate things, and they have to be addressed as such. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. All right, and Brian, thank you for your patience and waiting for yours. Yeah. Consider a recommendation from Planning Commission to approve application 2023-04, Brian Schultz, applicant for a garage, allowing for zoning code interpretation that this is an attached garage. If approved, Planning Commission will draft revision of zoning code to reflect this. So basically what's going on here, if anybody has any questions, this was a roadblock of sorts for Brian to build a garage on his property. We have restrictions in our code that don't allow for a detached garage to be, in his scenario, much larger than 20 by 20. That doesn't fit much in a garage. But if we have an attached garage, there are much less limitations on the size. So this comes down to a great picture right here of what it looks like, having a breezeway that connects the two. Does this constitute an attached garage with a breezeway? And that's the question. Planning Commission said yes. And we at our level have to figure out if that is the same in our eyes as well.
Well, it's just kind of a silly proposition here, but you know, if you build a deck and it's attached to the house, it's attached to the house, right? If you got a breezeway between a couple buildings, that kind of attaches it all, and that's how I look at it.
The only difference was, though, in that regard, is that the breezeway had to have footings like the garage, or, correct, Scott, we talked about?
Yeah, you know, and that goes outside of what our ordinance is, but by way of code, you have to have footings in order to attach buildings, and that's just part of the process. But that's not what we're trying to talk about. We're trying to really stick to the ordinance part of it. And when you think about it, if you're identifying two buildings, that's great. You know, I would agree with that as well. You know, identifying that it's just two buildings that can be connected by a breezeway like this. Not just footings, but also roof line, everything else. The problem in other communities has been that, you know, attached garage, well, you could have 5 attached garage with 5 breezeways between them. Now they're all, you know, within compliance according to the ordinance. We're going to rewrite that at the Planning Commission level, but we definitely want to make sure that Brian can build a garage in his yard.
Well, I
Because
also think with lot sizes, you'd run up against setback requirements real fast. So I'm not, when I read this, I was like, I want to see someone that creative.
Well, if
By
you
the way,
look-
it looks
if-
beautiful.
If you look at the home, if you look at the house though, seeing if they had to comply with the attachment of being the garage actually attached to the home, it would ruin the look of the house.
I think the short answer is yes, and we update it and stop holding them up.
That makes it worse sitting through all that stuff.
It's like, and they're gonna say no, and my water bill, and I just, I'll make a motion, I guess, is it to direct Plan Commission to work on an ordinance? Direct the Plan Commission to work on adjustments? Well, I make a motion to approve his application.
Second.
That it is attached, and direct Planning Commission to update the ordinance to clarify this.
I'll second all that.
John did. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Consider bid award for sanitary sewer lining project.
Okay, so we're looking for two things here tonight. We're looking to award the bid to Visu Sewer, and then we're gonna talk about a change order if you decide to award the bid. So what we're doing here is lining some sanitary sewer pipe adjacent to Highway 20 in conjunction, yet outside of the project. This is a standalone project from the DOT project. We'll have this work done prior to their project starting. And within that, there is one private sanitary lateral that crosses Highway 20 from a property all the way across the 4-line. So the plan, as we do street projects, we try to address the sanitary lateral, so we don't ever have, and nobody ever has to go back in there and dig that new road up. But unfortunately, pricing did not come back favorable for that resident. And I had a conversation with them today about this. So we did this exact same thing on Main Street, if you remember, and we had way better pricing, and that's why we thought that this would be the way to go. Unfortunately, I can't recommend to you guys that we go assess somebody 18 grand to line their sanitary sewer lateral. We can't support that. So I did talk with them today, and they are not currently having any issues with that pipe. There is a good Plan B in place if their pipe does fail. I don't think they would have to excavate the state highway. There's another area adjacent to the Brooks Court, Edward Street area that I think we could tie them into that would save them some money down the road if and when their pipe fails. So that's why we're looking to take the sanitary lining portion out of it through the change order. And the only thing I want to say about that is that if we take that sanitary lateral lining out, it does not change who's low bid. We've already run the numbers on that. So any questions about awarding the bid? It's Visu Sewer. We have worked with them. They just did the lining in 2022 for us. They've done multiple projects with the village. It was good to have two bids and relatively close bids. But I recommend to move forward with Visu Sewer.
So what's the bottom line then that we're gonna be voting on?
First, we need to award the current bid as it sits for 126,068. And then, if that happens, then we're gonna come back and talk about a change order. And that change order would be to remove the sanitary lateral lining and add in some additional mainline work for a decrease of, I think it was 26,000.
So it puts us at just under 100K.
Correct.
And we had 135 budgeted.
Correct.
Okay. And have we already decided that we're using that 35 somewhere else?
So
or is
we
that-
do have some sanitary work within the DOT's project as well, some manhole work, stuff like that.
So that 35 will offset those costs?
That's correct. It should more than cover it, in case any other work comes up within the DOT's project.
Well, then I'll move that we approve the sewer lining project to Visu Sewer for 126,068.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'll make a motion to approve the change order with Visasewer to reduce the contract by $26,314.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks.
All right, update direction to staff regarding pursuing grant funding for design and engineering of the bike trail, East Troy to McWanago, from the 2/6 meeting.
So I summarized the situation in my memo. Basically, the village engineer is recommending that we go for the TAP grant. There's not a feasibility grant available. And part of the reasoning for recommending it is they think it might be a long shot to get it on the first try. But what they're tending to see is that sometimes these grants are not awarded on the first try, that they have to see them a couple times. I talked to McWanago, they're supportive of it, their board did review it. They approved moving forward to submit the grant application. I know Chairman Clarkowski's in agreement with it. I'm not sure if it's been before the town board at this point in time. One of the things the Village of McWanago administrator who has experience with grants recommended too is that our village board consider reaching out to some of our legislators to talk to them about the project and get people at the state level familiar with this project. Just getting it in front of people, and I'm getting some contacts at the DOT as well. But the cost is split between the three municipalities, so I think that, that cost is minimal to submit for the grant application at this point in time. If we were approved, we would do the 20% match, and that would be split 3 ways. Obviously, we'd have to have formal agreements, but that's what we've all verbally agreed on at this point in time, and I think that's what was agreed on the last time. So if it were, just say, for example, for design and engineering, $500,000, it would be about $33,000 a municipality, if we got the grant. So I'm just looking for board direction, basically. I would like a motion to approve moving forward. It's not something that we specifically budgeted for. Again, this is not a significant dollar amount.
Make a motion to approve engaging Lynch and Associates to prepare grant materials for the East Troy McWanago Bike Trail.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, items associated with ordinance 2023-01, Code of Ethics, adopted on February 6th.
So I talked to Eileen a little bit Friday, I think, came back that this would be public records, right? So I'll make a motion to table this until staff's ready to clarify who and what we're going to get in the disclosures.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to reports, 2022 annual room tax report. Any questions? Okay. January financial reports. Any questions?
When are we doing the audit?
Audit is well underway, so we're wrapping up things. We're just dealing with some of their final audit questions, and I'll be bringing fund balance designations to the board, hopefully first meeting in March.
Emergency services from January 10th. Any questions? Airport manager's fourth quarter report. His detailed report.
I have a question.
Yes.
There was a report here that I read about the state inspector coming out and finding them at the fuel farm.
Yes.
And I guess it said state found condensate moisture at the 100 octane area, pump, whatever you want to call it. And I guess the question that went through my mind was, shouldn't the party that runs the fuel facility have found this moisture out there?
I can't speak to exactly when, the seal failed, right? So it did happen that when the inspector came, I don't know if it was adjacent to a rainstorm or what, but the seal had failed. It's been repaired. I don't know when the moisture got there and how long it was there. So I guess it's tough to answer that question. I understand exactly where you're going with it, but I just don't know that any of us can answer it.
I think, though, to address the larger question, something that Jason and I have talked to Walter about is, so if Walter's not available, something happens to him, he's out sick, he's hurt, whatever, who on Jason's team is going to know about that fuel farm?
And he's with us tonight.
So, I mean, you know, we can plow the runway when it snows, and if Walter's not available, we can, you know, fix things if Walter's not available, except for that fuel farm. And so it's getting us up to speed on that so that there's a backup. I think then we can start to better answer the, okay, is there a monitoring that's not occurring that needs to happen?
So any questions about the fuel farm report aside from Forty's question? How about any questions about the planning commission minutes from February 13th? I hope there's no questions from library board on January 10th because we do not have the person here to answer those, 40. DPW director's fourth quarter report. Any questions?
How do you get all that done?
How about airport minutes from January 9th? If there are no questions, then I'll make a motion to adjourn. We do not have a closed session tonight.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Our meeting is adjourned.